And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436. 580-KIDO. Let's go to Washington. Our great friend David Ray joining us from the Federation for American Immigration Reform. David, good morning.
Hey, morning, Kevin. How you doing?
Good to have you with us. The pride of the Ohio State University. He's with us here.
Refugee of Ohio, like yourself.
That's right, Ohio, where all good things come from.
Yeah. And all wise people leave. No, I didn't say that.
Gotta be careful on that one.
Don't ever repeat me on that one.
Right. No TMZ here. Let's talk a little bit about what the mainstream press is not reporting. Wave after wave of people flooding the zone, if you will, and we're not talking football or basketball. We're talking the border. Have we ever seen anything like what we're seeing now that has not been reported?
Well, I mean, certainly not in the last decade. Just to give you an idea about the size and scope of the problem, in 2014, if you recall, President Obama declared that we were having a humanitarian crisis at the border with the rush of Central American minors and their families. And that the February of 2014, there were just under 43,000 apprehensions that month. By comparison, February last month in 2019, there were over 76,000. So, and they are expecting it to exceed 100,000 this month. So this is getting us really into unprecedented numbers, particularly given the fact that, in the old days when illegal immigration from Mexico was so high, this is primarily coming from Central America, but when it was coming in from Mexico, it was primarily young men looking for work. Now the demographic of the population has really changed, and what we have are lots of women and children coming, and these are very exploitable populations. We've had 2 young children die just days after arriving into the United States. It's a very dangerous and exhausting journey for them. 30% of the women are saying they're being sexually assaulted on the way to the United States, 17% of men. So the face of the crisis has changed. It is fueled by the perception, and it's I guess it's more than a perception because it's a reality that you can gimmick our asylum system and at least get into the country. 2 million of those people who got into the country and have now been ordered deported by the courts. Most of these are Central Americans. They are nowhere to be found. And so they come into the United States, they disappear. If we had mandatory E-Verify in place, they would at least be locked out of the job market. So that would be an incentive for them to return home. But as we have it now, there's, the only people who can fix this, and this is one thing I want your listeners to understand, this is not something President Trump can fix on his own. You can't fix this with an executive order. We are talking about asylum law, and presidents can't change laws. They can modify the way laws are enacted and so on, but they can't change the law. And the law says you step 1 foot in the United States and ask for political asylum, and you're basically in like Flynn. And that's what's happening. And 90+% of these cases will eventually be thrown out if they're even properly filed. But it doesn't matter because these folks are in the country and disappeared.
David Ray joining us from FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's play Truth Detector here, and we're not playing the real-life Truth Detector. When you have people saying that we're breaking up families, that the president is a lawbreaker, that we vilify the Border Patrol, we want to disband ICE, these aren't the ramblings of left-wing lunatics. This is mainstream platforms from a lot of politicians. I know you're a nonpartisan organization, so we'll hit you with that phraseology of the question.
Well, there have been several of the presidential candidates on the Democrat side who have talked about dismantling ICE, scrapping the organization, starting over. Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris are 2 that come to mind immediately. And what I have found so fascinating about this entire debate is that people don't seem to understand what it is that ICE really does. And I don't understand why ICE has been so vilified. I mean, the Border Patrol is kind of the thin green line on the border. But once you get past the border and you're in the interior of the country, whether you're talking about intercepting smuggling rings of, people trafficking children or women for prostitution, or you're talking about drug smugglers and caravans of drug smugglers, in the Carolinas or what have you, or even your ports of entry, all of that stuff is handled by ICE. And all of these indicators, I just find it appalling that anyone would consider it would be okay for human trafficking and modern-day slavery and forced prostitution to be, smuggled into this country and taking place in modern America. But if you're advocating for doing away with ICE or for scrapping it or for enforcing any of our immigration laws, and that's basically what you're embracing. I can't fathom how they could possibly understand that they know what they're advocating when they say they want it dismantled and done away with.
Well, this is, again, when you hear people saying we should have open borders, we should have this, that, and the other. Before we get back to that, though, David Ray at 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio, how would you rate the president's job? How's he doing on this issue?
Well, I mean, we rated President Trump probably the first year after he came into office, and at that point we gave him an A-. And that was during the Trump effect. I mean, the illegal immigration apprehensions plummeted after he came in because people became aware that he was serious about enforcing the law. But since then, it's really gone in the opposite direction. And, I have to say, I would rate the president pretty high simply because he is doing everything he can think of. He has tried, for example, saying, the only way that you can ask for political asylum is if you come into the United States through a legal port of entry. Well, the courts threw that out. So, he is trying everything that he can do. He's pushing for more detention beds. He's put the military on the border. Anybody who says he hasn't fought for the wall, which would make a difference, quite a difference, according to the Border Patrol. Anybody who thinks he hasn't done everything humanly possible to get the monies for that wall didn't pay attention to the longest government shutdown in all of history. So I think you'd have to rate the president pretty high, with the caveat that he has at least one of his hands tied behind his back and sometimes the other one as well. And that this is a situation that, the last 3 or 4 presidents have had a hard time doing. I'll remind you, the first photos that leaked out about the kids in the cage, those were actually taken during the Obama administration. And that, now families know that, one change we'd like to see is that if you come into the United States with your kids as a family, families should be allowed to be detained until their asylum cases are heard. Right now, the rules on the books are that no child can be detained for more than 20 days. And that's what catch and release is. These families, by law, are released together. We think that if you're a child alone, in the system, okay, well, then the 20 days makes sense. But if you're there with your parents and you're being detained, then you can be detained until your case is heard. And that right there would deter a lot of this illegal immigration because people know that if you arrive with a kid, it's your get out of jail free card. So given what the president, and the president can't change that law, only Congress can. And you have a Democratic Party that is so blinded by their hatred for him that they're willing to see this kind of damage being done to the country by out of control immigration, and the fact that we don't know who these people are when they're coming in. Just last week in Virginia, we had an MS-13 incredibly violent scene where a high school kid was stabbed 100 times and then his body was set on fire and thrown into a trench. And a highway patrolman driving by saw the scene and discovered the body. But the point is that, when people are coming in at this volume and velocity, and most of them without any form of identification, we really don't even know who we're letting into the country. And that's all you can do is kind of, and the president's hands are tied by the laws the laws and agreements that have preceded him. And that's really unfortunate.
Indeed. Our great friend David Ray joining us. So how do you see this playing out, where we have the libs and everybody else yelling about funding for the wall, he's not getting the wall, and then the propaganda perpetrated by the devious little libs, or as we call them here at KIDO Talk Radio, the DLL, that the Border Patrol, they don't want the walls don't work.
Well, I mean, I've seen press conferences with the president of the National Border Patrol Council, Brandon Judd, who lives either, I think, in Idaho or Montana. I think it's probably Montana. But he has specifically said, let's be crystal clear about this. We want the wall. Walls work. Walls save lives. Walls save the lives of Border Patrol agents. They know that, for example, I've seen walls work with my own eyes. When one of the first caravans came up from Central America, I don't know if you saw the video or not, or if your listeners did, of the Central Americans just busting down the border gates and breaking into Mexico. I mean, right there at this bridge that crossed from Guatemala into Mexico, busted the gate down. Thousands of them swarmed into Mexico, and it looked like they were going to do the same thing once they got to the United States. And lo and behold, they hit the wall, and there is about 14 miles of wall south of San Diego. And when they hit that wall, they were stopped dead in their tracks, and they had to stay in Tijuana and await a slow entry into the United States through a legal port of entry. Now they're just going to more remote parts of the border and trying to sneak into the country. And if they get caught, then they ask for political asylum. But the fact is that the Border Patrol itself, the men and women of the Border Patrol, say that the wall works. And that where I see this going, I think this is going to be an enormous issue going into the next campaign, into the presidential campaign of 2020. I think the Democrats are on the wrong side of this issue because, your working class Americans understand through what they've seen through their own eyes and their own experience that illegal immigrants displace workers, particularly blue-collar workers. If illegal immigrants were coming in and taking the jobs of politicians, I bet you people on Capitol Hill would wake up to this issue a lot faster. But I think this is going to be a big issue right in the presidential race, and it's not going away anytime soon. This recent crisis has taught us that, and that America is going to have to come to terms with a way to humanely secure our borders while offering those who are truly fleeing political persecution safe haven, which is what our asylum laws are intended to do.
David Ray, go Buckeyes. Good to have you with us.
Go Buckeyes. Good to be with you, my friend. You have a great day. Also
the pride of Akron, Ohio. You and LeBron and me.
Yeah. It's a short list, isn't it?
David, take care, sir. Thank you.
You too, Kevin. You have a great day.
Our great friend David Ray joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio coming up next at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We've got the movement towards the legalization of hemp, and we had a spirited conversation about it yesterday. Also, thanks to a young lady who called in yesterday, we're going to hear from Bill Bennett. Bill Bennett was on the Fox News channel, William Bennett, and talking about drugs and how in the old 80s we said, let's just say no to drugs. Why can't we bring that one back today? Why are we looking at legalization of all these narcotics, everything else, and not going back to what worked in the 80s? And if you weren't around in the 80s, we're going to give you an explanation on that. We're going to educate you on it. We're going to take your calls on it. We're going to have a conversation about it. And, of course, another, one negative email, you need to read the Idaho tax code and find out just how important the grocery tax is, and we need it. I don't know. I'm still hearing from many more people that support repealing the grocery tax than, in fact, want to keep it. And we'll do all that before Glenn Beck. A lot going on. Thank you for waking up on the right side with me, Kevin Miller, on KIDO Talk Radio.
Well, Brian, the measure passed overwhelmingly in the House on Monday with only 7 no votes. Sponsored by Republican Representative Carolyn Troy, if this bill is passed, then both hemp production and processing would be legal in Idaho. Idaho law would also be caught up with federal law. The 2018 Farm Bill legalized hemp so long as it contains less than 0.3% THC. Troy says her bill would solve any current issues with interstate commerce. For example, hemp being transported between states where it's legal, but then running into trouble if the shipment passes through Idaho. She added that the crop could also be a big boost for farmers.
I've heard stories where farmers are paying up to $1 to $2 per seed to grow hemp. So, and we know how to do that. We're really good at it. So, an opportunity for our farmers to produce seed for other farmers to grow hemp might be the perfect niche for Idaho to hit.
Troy added that she thinks there's an opportunity to process hemp as well at the paper plant in Lewiston. Now, the bill is scheduled to be in the Senate State Affairs Committee either tomorrow or sometime this week, and the measure would still need to clear the Senate and get a signature from the governor in order to become law.
There we have it from our friends at Channel 7. Kevin Miller in the morning here. KIDO Talk Radio. Now, yesterday we got into the hemp discussion rather late into the program during the 8 o'clock hour, and we had a lot of pro-hemp people calling in and saying, Kevin Miller, you're full of it. Hemp is great. We need to have some hemp underwear. And hemp. However, from the Idaho Prosecuting Attorneys Association, which, by the way, we reached out to them to see if they would come on the program, they're against this. The Idaho Sheriff's Association, they're against this. Why? We'll tell you in a minute. KIDO Talk Radio Time, 626, traffic and weather together.
7's Eric Gabbard.
That's a very good point, Ray Amaya. I'm sure during the Tree Fort Festival, which is very, very popular, all these bands coming in, put together by 3 young individuals that are true believers. And it's not like these folks make millions off of it. In fact, they put it together out of their own pocket. You want to learn more about Tree Fort, you can go to the Inspire Excellence podcast. Look up the Tree Fort Founders with Tommy Ahlquist and Kevin Miller, brought to you by Ball Ventures Ahlquist. Speaking of hemp, which is what we're talking about, and the hemp necklaces available probably downtown this week, and hemp this and hemp that, according to the Idaho Prosecuting Attorneys Association. And by the way, we've offered these folks to come on. We'll send it out right now. If the Idaho Chief of Police Associations, the Sheriff's Association, the Fraternal Order of Police Association, if these guys want to come on, we would love to hear from it. You're not going to hear them anywhere else. Why? Because the pro-hemp propaganda has taken over the entire state of Idaho, it would seem. There are no roadside tests available for law enforcement to test whether a plant is hemp or marijuana on the street. Some of the sponsors of HB 122 have been misleading in their statements with regard to what law enforcement can and cannot do on the street when they come into contact with hemp or marijuana. As we just said, there are no roadside tests to determine whether or not the hemp is hemp or it's marijuana. In many cases, law enforcement cannot visually tell the difference between a hemp or a marijuana plant. And the only way law enforcement can make that call is through a quantitative THC test, which currently we do not have the ability to do in the state. Remember, we're going to go spend some money, $2 million, to get a test to help all the illegal hemp drivers come through so we don't prosecute them for marijuana. We'll just prosecute them for hemp if the law isn't passed. In addition, with no sideboards in place for law enforcement, all of Idaho's drug canines will become invalid. All of these issues and many more could be resolved if a consensus bill were to be considered. Unfortunately, Idaho's law enforcement community has been shut out of the conversation. Shame, shame, shame on you lawmakers. Shame, shame, shame on you liberal media. Shame, shame, shame on you, Kevin Miller. I just wanted to be part of the conversation. Law enforcement has not been talked to. They've not been consulted. They've been not brought into the conversation. Of course, the pro-hemp propagandists will tell me, oh, it's great. Look, this is the beginning of the assault on marijuana and making it legal in Idaho. In other words, there's going to be a ballot initiative. You've got the people running around saying, oh, it's medical marijuana. It's harmless. It's good for people. And then once you get the medical in, you get the legalization in, and you get stinky, stinky state parks, local parks, and stinky, stinky people. Look, I've never met someone who smoked marijuana that had any initiative in their life. They're mellow people. You can yell at them and everything's fine. But getting them to do work, that's another thing. So we'll talk about it. By the way, if you disagree with me, 580-5436, 580-KIDO, your calls, your conversation coming up next as you hear more from law enforcement saying no, no, no to hemp. The question is, will the state Senate listen to the law enforcement officials? Keep it here as this developing story continues. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie.
Good morning, Kevin.
Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Thank you, Dave Ramsey. Don't forget the Boise Music Festival is coming up June 21st. Going to be a huge event. Pitbull coming to town. That's right. Pitbull is coming to town. For tickets, for information on how you can win them free, go to KIDOTalkRadio.com. Right now, ticket prices go up tomorrow, so get your great deals right now. Joining us now, John Decker from the White House, Fox News Radio, exclusively on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, right here in the Treasure Valley. John, good morning.
Good morning. This may surprise you, Kevin. I've seen Pitbull. I've seen Pitbull twice. I saw him at his residency in Las Vegas, and I saw him right here in Washington, D.C. He puts on a great show.
Well, people here in the Treasure Valley will be happy to hear that. We've been chasing him for about 7 years. That's
awesome. Well, he'll put on a great show, and the people that attend that show will be very, I'm not getting paid for this, will be very pleased with the money spent on tickets for that show.
And we could go on and on about Pitbull, but I have to ask you, and this is my ignorance, the only song I know of him is when he goes, or I'm not even doing it any semblance of justice, sir.
Well, don't make me sing a Pitbull song. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Look, I think he's got a number of big hits, and that's the reason why he was able to do residency in Las Vegas, because he has such a catalog of music that he can fall back on. And so, like I said, I think it'll be a great show. When is that again? When is the show?
June 21st. It's
June 21st. Let me see. June 21st, I will not be able to make that show because I'm going to be in Chicago on June the 21st at the Rolling Stones. How about that?
John Decker. That's why you're that's why you're the newsmaker here. You're covering all the big issues, and knowing you'll find a way to make a story out of it.
There you go. Right, somehow. But that to me is the greatest rock and roll band that's ever lived. I love the Rolling Stones, and so what better place to see it? No offense to Boise, but I think that Chicago is the best city in America in the summertime.
Now, one more final thought that has nothing to do with the topic here. You've got the Rolling Stones. They're in their 70s, right?
I know. Isn't that amazing, right?
So they're still at it, these big, huge monster shows. And a buddy of mine just saw Kiss, and apparently this is their alleged last tour.
Right.
What do you make of these guys in their 70s still rocking it out?
I think it's remarkable. It's amazing. And, I've seen the Rolling Stones play many times, and they are still, every one of them that performs, Mick and Keith, they're just still remarkable. And age is not a factor. It really isn't. I can't speak to Kiss. I've never seen them perform live, but I can speak to the Rolling Stones. They give fans their money's worth.
Speaking of which, one could say that about Michael Cohen when it comes to the FBI.
Yeah, Michael Cohen, some news about him yesterday, and that is because the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York released hundreds of pages of documents, many of them redacted, relating to that FBI raid that took place last year of Cohen's home, his office, his hotel room. Michael Cohen, of course, the former personal attorney for the president. And the documents show the FBI was investigating Michael Cohen in July of 2017. That is much earlier, Kevin, than previously known. And there was a lot of redactions in these documents, including information to that that campaign finance scheme, related to paying off Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal. That leads me to believe that federal prosecutors in New York are not close to wrapping up their investigation.
Which is shocking because you hear so much about the report should happen any day now.
Right. Yeah, well, I'm not the one saying that. I've never been the one to speculate on that. I think that reporters that have done that have been embarrassed because obviously there is no report that has been completed by Mr. Mueller that's been handed over to Bill Barr. And the reason why we don't know when it's going to be that Mr. Mueller is going to be completed with his investigation is because he doesn't leak. And that's the reason why there's just speculation. And, it's unfortunate that people report things that they may not be fully briefed on. But what's been happening, I don't know when. I don't know if it's weeks, if it's months, in terms of when Mueller's going to be complete with his investigation. But keep in mind, even when he's done with his investigation, it's then up to Bill Barr, the Attorney General, to decide what the public actually sees in the Mueller report. So that's another element to this story.
John Decker, finally, what do you make of the war of words between Kellyanne Conway, presidential advisor, her husband, and the president? And how difficult is it for Ms. Conway to do her job when her husband and the president are openly feuding?
Well, look, I can't get inside the head of Kellyanne Conway. I know her very well, but, I don't know her well enough to get inside her head. And, it's got to be difficult. There's a Twitter war that now has been taken up to a new level between the president and George Conway, the husband of Kellyanne Conway. George Conway is a prominent conservative lawyer, and George Conway has, not been shy about criticizing the president. He's been a persistent critic of the president's policies. Lately, he's been questioning the president's mental health, and the president tweeting today that he is a stone-cold loser. That is very unusual to see the president in a public Twitter feud with the husband of his senior counselor, and that's what's been going on.
From her days as Kellyanne Fitzpatrick as a young woman,
right.
Always on all the shows back in the day, so you go
right.
way back with her.
Oh, I do, and, she's very nice, a very nice person, and, she's always been very nice to me, and it's got to be difficult. I put myself in her shoes just generically. If my wife, for instance, was tweeting negative things about my bosses at Fox, it would put me, in a very awkward position. That's not happening. That would not happen. But, it's one of those things that Kellyanne Conway is dealing with right now, and it's happening in the most public way, where we're talking about it, Kevin, and this story likely will be on Access Hollywood tonight even. It's like one of those types of stories, which makes it more difficult because it is so public.
John Decker, good to have you on in your 8, our 6 a.m. hour. Usually you're Mr. 10 o'clock your time, 8 o'clock our time. We're moving you around.
It's nice to be on your show early. Absolutely. Great to be on your show early, Kevin. I look forward to talking to you soon. Buy your Pitbull tickets, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you, John. Take care, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our great friend John Decker with a review of Pitbull. And speaking of Pitbull, joining us now from Mountain Home, Idaho, Doug. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hey, Doug.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah, about the hemp. I mean, it's the way I see it. It's all about money, votes. That's all it's about, money and votes. I mean, when you got the farmers wanting to do this, yeah, none of the farmers I know, the ones that maybe have infiltrated from California to here, just like the politicians. When we start seeing your Ada County turn blue for the first time since I've been here, since 74, that ought to spell it all out. I mean, whenever them blue people come from, and wherever they go, they ruin things.
I like that. I like that idea. Just calling them the blue people.
Yeah, they are. They're friggin', what was that cartoon? Smurfs.
Yeah, the Smurfs.
There you go. And that advertisement you had about the furniture place.
The Meyer Furniture in Mountain Home.
Yeah,
and
the
Meridian.
one in Mountain Home. I don't know how that thing stays in business. Sorry about contradicting your advertisement, but that place, they ain't a car in front of it year round.
Well, that's why
I
they
really
that's
don't.
why that's why
I
they
really
hired.
don't know how they stay in business.
Well, that's why they hired us to bring the cars in.
Oh, okay. Got you. But, I mean, look what you got in these farm fields. And I'm not saying all Mexican people are like that, but, I mean, when you got Mexicans doing all the work, what do you think's going to happen? You know, they know how to grow weed, whether it's hemp or marijuana. It's all the same thing. They just got to classify it different to make it get past the cops. You know, it's a joke. It really is. I mean, look around at the Democrats and the wall, and look around at these drugs and doing away with ICE and all that. It's all about votes. I mean, let somebody get stoned all the friggin' time. They ain't got no brain cells left. They're going to vote for them.
They're going to vote for the libs.
Nah, yeah, they're going to vote for the Smurfs. I like that. I'm sort of liking that word.
I like blue people,
All right,
but
I'll
anyway.
let you go.
Thanks, Doug. Take care.
Yep, bye.
Bye-bye. And by the way, go see our friends in Mountain Home, DeMeyer Furniture and Mattress. Let's put some cars in their parking lots and show them how much we appreciate a great local business. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KID. I was doing some research yesterday, and I was hanging out with a couple young people that really aren't familiar with what went on in the 80s. And in the 80s, you had somebody by the name of Nancy Reagan, Ronald Reagan, coming up with this thing called the Partnership for a Drug-Free America, right? You remember that? A Partnership for a Drug-Free America. And these ads, known as public service announcements, aired on something called television, not monitors, not pads, not tablets, television, where you would sit in one room and watch this thing. You didn't have your own personal device. And they aired on the radio. So for those of you that remember kind of, sort of, maybe you read about it in a history class, here's what your brain does when it's on drugs.
Is there anyone out there who still isn't clear about what doing drugs does? Okay, last time. This is your brain. This is drugs. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?
No questions from me. But why don't we go back to being against the drugs instead of trying to legalize them? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You're listening to Kevin Miller on your home for Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, the big two go at it on Hannity last night. Glenn Beck and Sean talk about the presidency, the future of the republic, and what motivates them to continue to fight for what is right. That'll be in the next hour of the program. Remember, if you miss any of the Kevin Miller Show, thanks to the diligent and hardworking Ray Amaya, you will get those podcasts available via our YouTube channel, but you don't have to go there. You just go to our website, KIDOTalkRadio.com, and you can check it out and listen. So if you miss Sean and Glenn talking about the right in the next hour of the program, you can go there anytime and check those out commercial-free. Also coming up, Representative Christy Zitto will join us. We'll talk about her bill, which would allow people 18 to 21 to be able to conceal and carry without the fear of prosecution in Idaho cities. That is in the Senate. Also, we'll get an update on the urban renewal bill, and maybe we'll continue our debate on hemp and why hemp is good for Idaho and why I'm just not down with hemp. Or some of my detractors would say, what's good for Idaho? And then we'll, again, ask her about the grocery tax repeal and if that is going to ever happen this session. And if I'm wrong, and I don't even want to make this a me issue, if we're wrong about repealing the grocery tax, then where was the opposition to it when every politician who ran for election and re-election said they were in favor of repealing the grocery tax? And I'm not a smart person. As many of you have figured out by listening to this program, one of my favorite phrases that was drummed into me as a little kid by my dad, Larry Miller, was, Kevin, if you had a brain, you'd be dangerous. So if I can say that every politician agreed with the people to repeal the grocery tax, why hasn't that happened? Now, some people say, well, look, I make out on the grocery tax, but do a majority of Idahoans make out on it? That's question one. And question two is, I think there should be an explanation. Mike Moyle, Matt Erpelding, at the beginning of the session, met with Tommy Ahlquist on his podcast, Inspire Excellence. I was there with him, and we asked about it. They said it's not going to happen. The Lieutenant Governor, Janice McGeachin, said it would happen this session. And don't you love how the usual suspects play the game? Well, time's running out. We got to get home. Well, we haven't figured out how to fund Medicaid expansion. We haven't brought up the grocery tax repeal. Looks like the urban renewal bill, much to the joy of Boise Mayor Dave Beater, could die in the Senate. Urban renewal is important because if you want to build one of these palatial palaces, and I know that's redundant, but it's early, you would have to get the people to vote on a stadium, to vote on a library, instead of making it the whim of elected officials that have no accountability to the money that they spend from the taxpayers. Why wouldn't the Senate approve that? Why wouldn't the governor sign it? Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio.